If you don't own a home and you've been waiting to time the market, 2026 is shaping up to be the perfect year to get into the market for the first time. Not because everything suddenly becomes cheap. I mean, things are pretty cheap right now and it looks like they are only getting cheaper, but because the market is getting pulled back towards fundamentals. What people can actually afford, what they can borrow, and what rents are doing right now. I'm going to walk through a few key resources on screen. We're going to hit the national forecast, rates, rents, population trends, and the big one for first-time homebuyers is condo supply and pipeline, and why everything is pointing towards the best time right now this year for first-time homebuyers. And who knows when this opportunity is going to come again? Steve 𝐕𝐈𝐃𝐄𝐒 says a correction lasts about 5 years, and we are 4 years into this greater Vancouver market correction. So this may be your last year to act. Let's go through the data and then you can decide for yourself. So here on screen, first of all, I want to start off with the national forecast because it frames the tone for 2026. Let's take a look at this. Royal LePage is forecasting the aggregate price of homes in Canada will increase 1% year over year in the fourth quarter of 2026. This is a 2% increase year over year for Q4 for detached single family homes, and then 2.5% decline over the same period for condos. And then the aggregate home price in the greater regions of Toronto and Vancouver is expected to decrease 4.5% to 3.5% respectively, while prices in Greater Montreal are forecasted to rise 5%. So it's looking here like 3.5% decrease for Vancouver. So for context, what does this mean for first-time home buyers? A flat to slightly down market is usually healthier for you because you're not chasing a moving target every single month. You're less likely to get trapped into emotional bidding. You often have way more time to negotiate the terms that you want, especially things like financing, inspection, and potentially even price reduction, credits on the price, and you can do that with more confidence and more time. So you don't need to feel rushed or pressured into a decision. And this is a good sign that they're expecting a decrease in overall price for Vancouver because a lot of these forecasts are pretty optimistic. When we look at supply and demand, especially for condos here in Vancouver, there is a huge oversupply in condos. And you know, once there is an increase in supply, demand decreases, and that puts downward pressure on pricing. And I have all the data to show you that we are looking at an oversupply of condos and prices should come tumbling down, giving you guys an opportunity to get a really good deal in the market right now. But first, let's connect it to the rates because the rates determine the borrowing power and borrowing power determines how much you can actually afford. All right, here's the Bank of Canada website. We're looking at the headline here. Bank of Canada maintains policy rate at 2.25%. So if you've been following rate cuts, and I know a lot of first-time home buyers are because they want rates to go down so they can afford more, lower monthly payments, you know how it works. So on December 10th, 2025, the Bank of Canada held their policy rate at 2.25%. The reason why this matters, and it isn't just a number, it's the feeling of stability. When rates are moving fast, buyers freeze or panic. In a steadier rate environment, you can plan, get pre-approved, shop properly, and make a confident offer. And if we scroll here to the bottom of the article, it says here, CPI inflation slowed to 2.2% in October as gasoline prices fell and food prices rose more slowly. The CPI inflation has been close to the 2% target for more than a year. And down here, if inflation and economic activity evolve broadly in line with October projection, Governing Council sees current policy rate about at the right level to keep inflation close to 2%. So this is a really good sign that we're going to see some stability when it comes to the interest rates in the market right now. And you know, in real life, buyers don't really compare home prices to home prices. They're really looking at comparing their monthly payment to their rent. And mortgage brokers literally qualify you around your monthly payment, how much you can afford every single month. And if you look at it from the other perspective, the perspective of a seller, they really want interest rates to go down because a lot of these people are going to be selling at a loss because many owners locked in some really low fixed rates, but most of those mortgages are up for renewal. They're in at higher rates. And these sellers are eventually going to have to become realistic because now their monthly payments may not make sense and they'll be more willing to sell, take that loss because it'll help alleviate the monthly cash flow deficit. So a really good sign for first-time home buyers. A lot of these sellers are going to be more willing to flex on price and even list their homes at a loss, creating more opportunity for you. And one last thing to add, when interest rates were really low, it was very cheap to get into a new mortgage and get a new house versus keeping your old home with an old mortgage. That was a pretty wide gap. But now, because of the interest rates, that gap has been narrowing, which helps buyers and sellers meet in the middle more easily. Okay, now like I said, buyers are not comparing home price to home price. They're comparing their monthly payment on a mortgage to how much they're paying in rent. And so now let's talk rents, because rents are the pressure valve for first-time home buyers, and rents are also a major driver for investor demand. Okay, here we are, rentals.ca. This is the December 2025 rent forecast. The national average in rent right now is $2,074. This is down 3.1%. And this is 3.1% year over year. Over the past 2 years, it is down about $100, so closer to 5%. So rents behave very differently than home prices. The asking rents tend to adjust very quickly to supply and demand, both up and down. So rental rates are very linked to vacancy rates. So when vacancy is low, that means there are very few empty units. Renters have fewer options, and then the average rent increases. But when vacancy rises, landlords need to compete, so rents flatten overall. So as you can see, almost across the board here in BC, we're down 7% year over year. Vancouver specifically down 6.6% year over year. So if rents are easing, it does two things for first-time homebuyers. It can make it easier to save month to month, and it also reduces investor urgency, because rent numbers don't support the same purchase prices. And this is ideal because we want to get the investors out of the market right now to create more opportunities for you, the first-time homebuyer. And if we look at the monthly market reports, we are seeing that there are very few investors actually active in the market right now. The rents just don't make sense. The interest rates don't make sense. But it does make sense for first-time homebuyers as it becomes cheaper to get into the market. What I mean by this is softer rents can help you save faster. This will also, like I said, reduce investor demand because rental math becomes less attractive. And if investors step back, first-time homebuyers face less competition in entry-level condos, which is exactly what we're targeting as first-time homebuyers. And we can tie rents and vacancy back to population and international migration. Not my strongest topic, but I've got the article here. Let's go and take a look together. Okay, here we are on the Statistics Canada website. Canada's population estimates third quarter 2025. Canada's population decreases from July 1st to October 1st, 2025. And it looks like we are down 76,000 people, a decrease of 0.2% over the third quarter of 2025. So this is a really good sign because we have seen when international migration surges, newcomers often enter the rental market first. This pushes down vacancy rates and rents up. This pushes down vacancy rates and increases rents. But we also see the opposite. When migration slows, vacancy rates rise and also rent pressure eases, seeing lower rents overall. And then scrolling down here, and then looking down here, we're looking at mainly temporary residents. We can see here non-permanent residents have the largest impact on population change. And then decrease in number of non-permanent residents, mostly attributable to study permit holders. So this means a lot of students. And all of these policy changes are starting to add up, leading to fewer arrivals and more departures. So what does this mean for you as a first-time homebuyer? Slower population growth can matter because it reduces demand on rentals. Less rental pressure supports softer rents. Softer rents weaken investor demand and puts more money in your pocket, saving your monthly rental payments. And then with less investor competition, again, buyers can often take more time, negotiate harder, and all of these entry-level units with really good margins start to become available for you. So I keep talking about vacancy rates. Let's see what they actually are. All right, this is the CMHC 2025 rental market report. If we scroll down here, we'll see this right here. So vacancy rates rose in major cities. In line with our recent forecast, vacancy rates increased in Canada's largest census metropolitan areas, CMAs. The average vacancy rate for purpose-built rentals rose to 3.1%, up from 2.2% in 2024. It's a 50% increase in vacancy rate. This rate is now above its 10-year average. So CMHC's market report for 2025 supports the same story. We can see here softened market conditions, eased rent pressures, weak renter household formation, and increased rental supply contributed to softened rental market conditions. So we can use vacancy rates as a pressure gauge for rents. Higher vacancy means more tenant choice, more landlord competition, but on the purchase side, it also means less competition from investors. So for first-time homebuyers, this means that you can rent without feeling trapped while you save and shop very carefully. You can wait for the right unit instead of rushing into something that doesn't make sense or overpaying for something that doesn't make sense. And then investors often become less aggressive buyers when vacancy rates rise and rent growth slows. So now the part that I'm excited to get into, this is the biggest opportunity for first-time home buyers. We're getting into the condo supply and pipeline effect. Back here, CMHC website. Oh snap. Come here, Nyla. Hello. So condominium apartment market risk in Toronto and Vancouver. So the CMHC analysis is basically the official version of what we describe as the market moving backwards to fundamentals. So let's go through these points really quickly. Between 2022 and 2025, total condo apartment sales dropped by 75% and 37% in Toronto and Vancouver. That is insane. A growing number of investors who made recent purchases are under financial distress due to falling prices. In Toronto, they face as much as a 6% capital loss on pre-construction purchases concluded in 2024. And then lastly, softening market conditions have led to project cancellations. We've seen this a lot last year. Between 2022 and 2024, these cancellations resulted in a 5 and 10-fold increase in the number of canceled units in Toronto and Vancouver, respectively. So when I read this, I saw, okay, sales dropped, but if we look here, a lot of projects are getting canceled. What does this mean for supply? Is this restricting supply so that, prices are not going to drop as aggressively? But if we scroll down here and take a look, there are still a record high 25,572 and 12,442 condo projects completed in Toronto and Vancouver, respectively. So if we look here at, this is for Toronto, this is month's supply of pre-construction and condo apartments. You can see here, this is 2025 Q1, a gigantic spike. This is insane. This is a big inventory buildup. This is obviously Toronto, not Vancouver. The months of inventory for pre-construction condos rose dramatically. This is how much product exists relative to today's sales. And typically what we see happen in Toronto, Vancouver is to follow. And a lot of these completions that we see here over here on the right side were projects that sold in the boom years, which we're looking over here, 2021, 2022. And these projects usually take years to complete. So even if demand cools today, the supply still shows up later. And that's how a market like this can feel really heavy with supply. And this also supports our investor argument. When rents cool and supply rises, condos like this become way less attractive to investors. So for first-time homebuyers, obviously more inventory means more choice. More choice means less bidding wars. And then less bidding pressure means that you can negotiate terms and get a really good price. But this also means you need to be smart. You have time to review your strata documents correctly. You have to watch out for upcoming maintenance, special levies, insurance costs, focus on buildings with strong management and healthy contingency planning. These are all things you can do in a market like this when you have a ton of selection. You can get into the best building in your neighborhood. So now let's talk pre-sales, because right now, financing and the pre-sale dynamic changes in this kind of market. Okay, now we're here on the Government of Canada website. We're going to go down to right here, Toronto and Vancouver housing markets. So here's the issue or question. Toronto and Vancouver housing sales have started to show signs of weakness, which can lead to declines in home building. And it talks about here, Canadians are facing uncertain economy, which is contributing to home sales falling in some of those markets. We know Canada needs more housing supply. That's why government is advancing a number of key measures like eliminating GST for first-time home buyers. Shout out first-time home buyers. On new homes up to $1 million, launching Build Canada Homes to increase supply of affordable housing, and leveraging new technologies to build faster at a lower cost. So all very good things. Obviously, this is the government website, so they got to write this kind of stuff. But if we look down here, lenders typically require a pre-sale threshold of 70% prior to releasing funds. And CMHC also noted that in Vancouver, weak pre-construction sales led to a lot of canceled projects or pausing of some projects that failed to meet this 70% threshold for financing. So we are definitely moving away from the speculation in hot markets. Pre-sales are easy and projects launch fast. But in slower markets like right now, pre-sales stall, incentives increase, and some projects delay or pivot or get canceled entirely. So a bit of a double-edged sword, but it actually lines up perfectly for first-time homebuyers like you guys. Yes, pre-sales right now are stalling, and there are a lot of projects that are having a hard time getting off the ground, but the ones that are getting off the ground are offering some very incredible incentives. And guess what? All those projects we talked about that launched in 2021 during the boom years when the market was really hot, every single project was getting off the ground. They're all completing right now in a softer market. So we have this, a giant oversupply of new product on the market that now these struggling pre-sales have to compete with. So this creates a perfect opportunity to get into something new if that's what you're looking for, because these developers are competing with a huge amount of brand new supply just to get the project off the ground. So when you're shopping for a home, make sure you're comparing what is available in the pre-sale market and what is a brand new. Understand, there are some risks with pre-sales such as delays or financial conditions, but make sure you're comparing the prices relative to today's resale market. Yeah, so we went through a lot in this video, but as you can see, everything is connected. And if you're a first-time homebuyer, 2026 may not feel easy, but it should feel fair. You get way more choice, way more leverage, fewer panic decisions. I mean, look at this incredible graph. The amount of oversupply right now is insane. Combine that with lowering rental rates, investors not active in the market. There's so much downward pressure on prices. You should be saving more on your monthly rents, and it would almost make more sense to get into a home right now than to continue renting. If you have any questions or if I missed anything in this video, leave me a comment. And if you want to get into the market for the first time, I've got a ton of very cheap options for first-time home buyers. I post them all on my Instagram page, so be sure to check that out. See you guys in the next video. Peace.